No one going to work should have to rely on that sense of charity to feed their children, and we commit to ending the need for food banks. But Labour's plan, as I said, for higher wages, for more regular hours and for lower costs. But both the Tories and the SNP governments have stood in the way of the change that working class people here in Scotland and beyond need. We want working class and middle class families to get a break after years of real pressure and in many cases real pain. So we will abolish the bedroom tax, we will protect tax credits, we won't raise VAT, national insurance or the basic and higher rates of income tax. But we will be honest, we'll be straightforward. Someone, somewhere, has to pay the bills. So we'll reverse the Tory tax cut for millionaires and bring back the 50p top rate of tax. We will end non-dom status. And I think this is important. Scots this morning, stuck in rush hour queues on the motorways. Scots this morning crowded onto buses or on trains going to work every day, pay their taxes. So today in our manifesto, Labour is serving notice that it's time for the super rich who jet in their private jets from Monaco to pay their taxes just like everyone else. Some of you will speculate who that's aimed at, but that's for another day. We will also make good on the promise of the vow and ensure that Scotland will have more power to vary taxes, the final say over benefit rates and full devolution of housing benefits so that we can begin to switch money from benefits into bricks. But one example of what's not in the pages of our manifesto is as important as the many that are within our manifesto. Unlike a manifesto that will be unveiled next week by the SNP, we will never support the cuts and chaos of full fiscal autonomy. We will never abolish the security of the UK welfare state. To do so would be to break the vow that we signed, and to do so would be to break up the UK state pension system. It would cut us off from taxes raised elsewhere in the rest of the UK at the worst possible moment for our country, and leave us facing a growing black hole which could only be filled by further cuts. So our manifesto makes it clear that Scottish Labour MPs will stand in defence of the Barnett formula. Scotland's higher public spending only survives because Scottish MPs stand up for the Barnett formula, or we have done in the past. Replacing this Barnett block vote of MPs who want to turn away that funding at our border and replacing them not with advocates of Barnett, but with those who would be abolitionists of Barnett would make sure that the formula doesn't last for another generation. Folks, we know the truth. The Barnett formula adds up to hundreds of pounds for every single Scot. It adds hundreds of pounds of investment for our schools and NHS here in Scotland. Other parties want to abolish the Barnett formula. We are clear. Scottish Labour MPs will defend and protect the Barnett formula today, tomorrow and forever. And throughout our manifesto, the value of Barnett is clear. We're already well established that the Nationalist plan to earn Barnett means an extra £7.6 billion of cuts that our country couldn't afford. But that's just one side of this important story. It also means cutting ourselves off from the extra funding Labour offers Scotland in our manifesto. Any costing of full fiscal autonomy has to account for what is lost, not just the additional cuts on top of Tory plans. So I want to set out the resources, I want to set out the change that will only come to Scotland with this Labour manifesto and with Labour MPs supporting and protecting Barnett. Now I know for people watching at home and people who might read about this in tomorrow's newspapers or look online, this idea of the Barnett formula Sounds like the type of thing we promised ourselves we would never talk about again after we left school. It sounds like old kind of calculus that we left behind. I know it sounds like something from a long forgotten maths class, but it's not. It's not abstract. It's important. It's a crucial source of funding. And the first area I want to talk about is the National Health Service and how it's supported in our manifesto and through Barnett. In 1945, Labour created the National Health Service. Of all the things that we've achieved, it's singularly the most important thing that our government or any government has ever achieved in the field of social policy. In 1997, we rescued and renewed it. And as I've listened to people across our country in recent months, they often talk about the state of our National Health Service. And when they discuss this with me, they always mention two things. Firstly, they say the staff are brilliant. Secondly, they say there just aren't enough of them. It's been 2,000 days since the NHS in Scotland last met its accident and emergency waiting time target. 2,000 days. So we can't go on like this. That's why Labour will send in reinforcements to Scotland's NHS. We will invest an extra £1 billion in Scotland's NHS. And how will we do it? It's pretty straightforward, because someone, somewhere, has to pay the bill for increased investment in Scotland's NHS. We will ask the wealthiest homeowners across the UK to pay a bit more through a mansion tax on properties worth over £2 million. And let's remember, less than 1/3 of 1% of that money comes from Scotland. So in addition to the mansion tax, we'll take more money from the tobacco companies. In addition to taking money from the tobacco companies, we'll make sure that the hedge funds pay their fair share towards Scotland's NHS. Because we can't get a world-class NHS on the cheap. And we said, for starters, in terms of these reinforcements, we would provide funding for 1,000 extra NHS nurses, and today I want to announce that we'll go further. In addition to using the mansion tax from properties over £2 million across the UK to invest in 1,000 more NHS nurses, we will also now fund 500 more GPs for Scotland's NHS. And I want to use that money for us to go further still. In many ways, Scotland leads the world in pioneering cancer treatment. But with 30,000 people in our country being diagnosed with cancer each and every year, we all know that none of us can rest. All of us, in our own different ways, have our own family experiences of someone being diagnosed or living or suffering from cancer. Our £200 million new cancer fund will make sure that cancer patients in Scotland get the treatment they need and deserve at the time that they need it and deserve it. This £200 million of additional resources will unlock access to the newest breakthroughs and the best drugs that are available. And more than that, I want to use this money from the mansion tax and other sources to go further in supporting our NHS. I've said time and again, and will always say it, that our NHS needs to take as seriously those with a fractured spirit as those with a seriously injured body. A quarter of us, just look around, a quarter of us at some point will experience a mental health condition or illness of some sort or another. So Scottish Labour will also establish a new £200 million health fund to give support to those who need it, focusing on prevention and early intervention when it comes to the issue of mental health. And because we recognise that bad health impacts on life chances of everyone in Scotland, we know that turning around our health record cannot begin and cannot end at the doors of our hospitals and GP surgeries. A poor diet is linked to poor health, poor educational attainment, and so on to poor life chances. I know I've said, and I may already have said it 220 times already in this election, but just 220 pupils from the most disadvantaged households across our country get the grades to go to our best universities. So I've set out a plan for change and reforming our education system to unsettle and reverse that trend. But I also want to make a health commitment to the children in those schools that are being let down the most. As we strive to turn around that record of disadvantage and that record of educational underattainment and those schools being let down by the Scottish Government, starting with the 20 most disadvantaged secondary schools in Scotland, I also want us to tackle the poor nutrition that further sets those children back. So today we can announce that we will start to tackle this by establishing breakfast clubs in the 100 primary schools that feed into the 20 secondary schools serving the poorest children. Because surely, in a nation as rich as ours, no child should start their school day on an empty stomach, and with Labour, that will be brought to an end. So I know that some councils, to enable the delivery of free school meals, are having to cut those breakfast clubs. But children shouldn't go hungry in the morning so they can be fed at lunchtime. And under Labour's plan, those children will get access to free school meals at lunchtime and access to breakfast clubs in the morning. All of this adds up to a plan for £1 billion of new investment in Scotland's NHS, and only a Labour government that believes in redistribution. Redistribution both from the rich and the poor and from the south to the north could even think about delivering on these sorts of pledges. Nye Bevan, Labour's creator of the NHS, speaks to us all through history when he says that the NHS will survive as long as there are folk left with the faith to fight for the NHS. Well, we are clear in this and in every election. The NHS is an article of political faith for the Labour Party and for the trade union movement. And in this and every election, we will fight for it. Now, the second area of funding within this manifesto that will come to Scotland only through a Labour government and only through guaranteeing the Barnett formula is another £1 billion plan to guarantee a better future for the next generation. Labour will tax the bonuses of the bankers to guarantee a job or training for all young people at risk of long-term unemployment. We won't allow another generation to live on the scrap heap. And we will do something more. We often talk about ending youth unemployment, and that is our mission. We are driven by a passion to achieve it. But what about those whose youth is behind them? Those who are older, those who are stuck in the dole for longer periods of their life, but have escaped before from that targeted support that was only available to the long-term young unemployed. So today I can announce in our manifesto that we will guarantee a job and training too for older, long-term unemployed people. Because regardless of your age, regardless of your circumstance, regardless of your family background, no one should be left behind, and our manifesto makes that clear and provides the funding to ensure it doesn't happen. But we will also go further. We will keep university tuition fees free, and we will give the poorest students an extra £1,000 on their bursaries. And we won't forget the majority of young people who don't go to university. We will invest the equivalent of those free tuition fees, £1,600, in every 18 and 19-year-old who isn't in college, who isn't in university, and who isn't in an apprenticeship. This is an incentive for employers to take these youngsters on, and it's an opportunity for the young people themselves to use that as capital to perhaps start up their own small business. It's an investment, not just in their potential, but in our country's future. We want to offer hope to young people again. We want to bring an optimism back into our politics and back into their lives. That sense of hope after a miserable few years, where the power of government can be a force for good again in people's lives. This is our choice for Scotland. And the question for all of us, will Scotland again be part of change or a barrier to making change happening? The Nationalists offer to stand up for Scotland, But every party we know seeks to do that.